Matthew chapter 17, verses 9 through 27. When they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus commanded them, saying, "Tell the vision to no one until the Son of Man has risen from the dead." And his disciples asked him, Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? And he answered and said, Elijah is coming and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah already came, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they wanted. So also the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he had spoken to them about John the Baptist. When they came to the crowd, a man came up to Jesus, falling on his knees before them, and said, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he has seizures and suffers terribly. For he often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, and they could not cure him. And Jesus answered and said, You unbelieving and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked him, and the demon came out of him, and the boy was healed at once. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, Why could we not cast it out? And he said to them, Because of your meager faith. For truly I say to you, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, Move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. And while they were gathering together in Galilee, Jesus said to them, The Son of Man is going to be handed over to men, and they will kill him, and he will be raised on the third day. And they were deeply grieved. Now when they came to Capernaum, those who collected the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and said, Does your teacher not pay the 2 drachma tax? And he said, Yes. And when Peter came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first, saying, What do you think, Simon? From who do the kings of the earth collect customs or poll tax? From their sons or from strangers? And Peter said, From strangers. Jesus said to him, Then the sons are exempt. However, so that we do not offend them, go to the sea and throw in a hook, and take the first fish that comes up. And when you open its mouth, you'll find a stater. Take that and give it to them, for you and me. So the summer of 2015 was a perfect summer. I spent the first month at a church of a family friend for an internship. Then when I got home, I turned 16. And I received a 2008 Chevy Silverado. I was leading church services, preaching around the community. So I was riding high. Life was good. But then, on a fateful September night, my mother, sitting across the kitchen table from me, told me, I'm leaving your father. And a few days later, she did. And my mother, my sisters, and I drove away from the house in which we all once lived together. The next day, I was in my middle school office filling out the visitor's log, about to go preach to 50 7th and 8th graders, the day after my parents separate. My hand was shaking. I didn't know what I was going to say. Not that I didn't have anything prepared. For those of you that know me, you know I can talk. That wasn't the case. But it was everything that I prepared feels like a lie. I don't know if I believe anything that I have prepared because my world has fallen apart. So as I climb up the stairs to the library loft, my heart's pounding, awaiting the students to arrive. And I do the only thing that I can. I pray. And it was short and sweet. Hey, God, I don't feel like being here. I don't know what I'm going to say. So if you're here, now would be a good time to show me. And in that moment, maybe the next few moments as students arrived in, something shifted. Not the circumstance. I was still in ruins. But as the students sat down, and as I opened my mouth, words of hope came out. And that day I learned what we learn in Matthew 17, that faith cannot stay in lofty places. It must descend with us into the jagged rocks. Because last week we read the beginning of Matthew 17, and Peter, James, and John saw Jesus transform before their eyes and turned as bright as light, face shining as the sun, and saw Moses and Elijah having a conversation with Jesus. And Peter, James, and John, they were going to just stay in there. They wanted to build tents and experience that forever, because who wouldn't? That's pretty great, I would say. But instead, Jesus leads them back down into the chaos of the world. And on the way down, they're having a conversation, a good time, and Jesus says it again. I am going to die. Before Peter could argue or process that, they arrived to a chaotic crowd. And in the middle of the crowd is the 9 disciples left at the foot of the mountain. And from the crowd burst forth a man and falls at Jesus' feet. It says, Lord, please have mercy on my son. He's demon-possessed. I tried to give him to your disciples, but they couldn't do anything about it. And Jesus said something pretty shocking here. You evil, you unbelieving, and perverse generation. How much longer do I got to put up with this? Now, the disciples are probably thinking in this moment, what do you mean unbelieving? This guy just fell down in faith at your feet. And I know this demon didn't work out, but we've cast out demons in your name before. We've left everything we've had, and we even believe you're the Messiah. What do you mean, unbelieving Jesus? And when the moment they get out of earshot, the disciples ask Jesus what we all probably would have asked in this moment: why couldn't we cast it out? And Jesus' response cuts deep. Because of your meager faith. Now, why was it meager faith? Well, they're silent as they continue to travel on. And then Jesus talks again and says, once again, I am going to die. And our text reveals that they were deeply grieved. Now, the disciples' crisis is that their faith is standing strong on mountaintops. But the moment it comes into the valley of suffering, it crumbles. And we do this as well. We can worship when life feels manageable and faith feels easy. But when the diagnosis comes, when our marriage falls apart, when our careers crater, faith evaporates. That faith cannot stay in lofty places when life is good, but it must descend into the jagged rocks of despair, tragedy, and pain. So what does faith descending to jagged rocks look like? Not in theory, but in flesh and blood. April 3rd, 1968, Memphis, Tennessee, is a ticking time bomb of social unrest. Martin Luther King Jr. is sitting up in his hotel room being crushed by the weight of the criticisms, death threats, and his daunting task ahead. That even though he's accomplished a lot, America's still got a long way to go. He's crushed. And not only that, but a storm's raging in Memphis. A tornado touches down a mere miles away from his hotel. So he tells his best friend, Ralph Abernathy, hey, I don't want to go to this event tonight. Go ahead and go for me. But then Ralph gets to Mason Temple, Tennessee, calls Martin and says, Martin, there are 3,000 people here in the middle of this tornado waiting for you. So Martin has a choice. stay in the safety and comfort of his bed, or walk out into the storm and into the chaos once more. Dr. King gets out of bed and goes to Mason Temple, Tennessee, and preaches what would become his last message, titled, "I've been to the mountaintop." That Dr. King never once in his life stayed in safety. His faith was not made in mountaintop moments, but in Birmingham prisons. And even though he experienced opposition every step of the way, he carried a vision in which God gave him of a better future. And not only that, lived in such confidence that maybe, just maybe, that vision he saw in faith was starting to break in to the present. And Dr. King is only one of many people who lived for a future in which they never physically experienced. Hebrews chapter 11 tells us a story of many people who lived looking to a future they never saw, that they never physically experienced. And here's how Hebrews chapter 11, verses 13 through 16 talk about these people. All these died in faith without receiving the promises. But having seen and welcomed them from a distance. All these died in faith, receiving the promises, but having seen and welcomed them from a distance. And having confessed that they were strangers and exiles on earth. For those who say such things make it clear that they are seeking a country of their own. And indeed, if they had been thinking of the country which they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Faith is not mere optimistic thinking, but living as if God's future has broken into the present. And when we live like that, God's future begins to reveal itself. The heroes of Hebrews could have turned to safety. Dr. Martin Luther King could have stayed in that hotel room, and I could have walked out of that middle school. But we did not. Because faith doesn't live in lofty places. But faith takes us to the jagged rocks of life. That faith doesn't keep us in safety, but forces us to embrace the chaos of the world. Because faith in lofty places is no faith at all. It's escapism. That faith doesn't make us run for the hills when things get hard, but it makes us pick up a hammer and start building the future in which God has shown us through his empowerment and his promise. And that's what I was doing on that September day in 2015, even though I didn't understand it yet. That I wasn't waiting for heaven to come and make it all better. But I marched into my family's rubble. And the Holy Spirit met me there. I didn't know what I was going to say. But rather than running from the chaos and hurt of the world, I stood in it. And even though I didn't feel like it, I chose to march forward in hope, no matter how small, that God was going to meet me there. And He did. That's what God's future breaking into the present looks like. That's what the Bible means when it says that we have the first deposits of new creation looks like. It's when God starts showing us a window into the world in which He has for us, even though we still hurt, even though we're still in pain, even though we may still be weeping tears of lost loved ones and suffering chronic illnesses. We have hope, no matter how small. That's what faith that descends the mountain looks like. That real faith doesn't wait for someday. It builds God's kingdom today. Faith doesn't run to lofty places, but marches into the jagged rocks of the world. Real faith doesn't just believe God will show up. Real faith lives like God has already shown up. And that's what God's calling you to today. Not to wait for life to stabilize or for things to start making sense, but descend into your jagged, rocked valley today, not someday. To invite God into the darkest parts of your life. And rather than try to bottle up those maybe bitter, angry, hateful emotions, say, God, here I am. And not only invite God into your darkest valleys, but then take it a step further and you start marching into others that descend with someone else into their valley. Reach out to someone this week that you know is going through a hard time, or maybe someone you've just not talked to in a long time if you don't know someone who's going through a hard time. And be there with them. And then be vulnerable. Share your story. Share your struggles of when you were in the valley, of when you were lost and confused in darkness and didn't know what to do. Because when we do that, we not only help the person we're talking to, but we help them start seeing a little bit of God's future. And that's what brings hope and life into their situation. And ours as well. That faith doesn't wait for rescue. It walks into the rubble, picks up a hammer, and starts building. That's how, in God's kingdom, mountaintops become real in the valley, and jagged rocks become holy ground.